All right, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another week of SaberSim's DFS office hours. It is Monday, May 1st of 2023, already May here. So the year is moving, year is flying by, almost halfway through 2023 here. But looking ahead to another good week of DFS. We had NASCAR on a Monday morning due to the rain over the weekend. So I hope you guys are enjoying the NASCAR sweat today. Looks like we have a 2-game NBA slate. We have a 6-game MLB main slate. And then we also have a single NHL playoff showdown for tonight. So it should be a fun day of DFS. Plenty to talk about. For those of you who are new here, welcome. My name is Andrew, one of the coaches over here at SaberSim. It's a show where we go over how to use the SaberSim app, answer any and all DFS related questions. You can post questions live in the YouTube chat or in the office hours channel in our Discord. There's a link in the description below to join the Discord if you are not already a member. Highly recommend it. A lot of good DFS conversation happening over there each and every day. We have similars that show you when we run sims for different sports, for different games. We pull in underdog tweets so you can see when the lineup comes in, and then conversely also see when the sim gets kicked off there. So all of that makes a lot of sense. Just going to get the app pulled up here. Looks like we have 2 questions to get us going today. One in the YouTube chat, one in the Discord. If anybody has any additional questions, now is always a great time to get those in. So I'm going to start with this one from Vegas Golf Fanatic here in the Discord first. And let me get this one in the chat. Question says, if I log in 30 minutes before lock and haven't adjusted any settings and 5 other people do the same at basically the same time, assuming no stat updates in the few minutes between occurrences, will we get identical top results for exactly the same contest size and type? If not, how does SaberSim make that magic happen? Okay, so it's a great question to get us started on a Monday morning here. So basically what this comes down to is that SaberSim is not a traditional optimizer. We are not optimizing based on projected points and trying to get you the top projected lineup every single time. If you were to use a different lineup optimizer like Lineup HQ or like Fantasy Cruncher or something like that, what those optimizers are doing is basically they are looking at the mean projection for every player, and then when you build your lineups, they're optimizing based on projected score. So if you were to use if you were to take this scenario and use it on one of those optimizers with no rules, with nothing to alter the lineups that you're getting, the answer would be yes to your question. And technically, the answer would be yes if you use the cash settings here. So for cash games, what you're trying to do is optimize for projected points. So in that scenario, we would use the average projections and then just pack in as many points as possible. But for your GPPs, right, for the contest that you're playing, your 20 maxes, your 150 maxes, where the sim diversity setting is on, this is ultimately where the magic happens. So what sim diversity does is we have thousands and thousands of sims per game for every game on the slate here. And what sim diversity does is, depending on where this is set, it determines how many of those 1,000 sims we use to build an individual lineup. So for instance, at sim diversity 9, you can think of this as like a range. So the higher sim diversity is, the less sims you are using per lineup, where at 10, you are using 1 sim of a game per slate per lineup. And I'll get into this a little bit. But basically what is happening. So I think sim diversity 10 is probably the easiest example here. At sim diversity 10, what we are doing is we are going and pulling a single game sim from each game here. So we pull 6 sims total for this 6-game main slate, and to create 1 slate simulation. And then based on how the players do in that 1 game sim, those are the fantasy points that we use when we go to build the lineup. So we'll see how everybody did in this Cleveland, New York game, how everybody did in the Chicago-Washington game. And what the fantasy points that you see in the app are not going to be what they scored in that game sim. What you see in the app is the average across all, 5,000 game sims. But in any one individual game sim, we look at Mackenzie Gore here, his average might be 16.18, but we have sims where he scores negative points, where he gets lit up and does really bad. And then we have sims where he scores 40 points and probably throws like a complete game shutout, right? So any one of those sims can be pulled. And then that will be his fantasy points when we analyze the lineups. And then based on how all the players did, we build you the best lineup that balances upside and correlation. And then that lineup gets put into your pool. And then we go and do the same exact process again. So basically by randomly sampling the sims here, by pulling when let's say we're looking at like a 20 max here, so we're going to use a actual like slider example where your sim diversity is at 8. We are taking smaller buckets of sims. So you have 5,000 sims. Those can be combined in like exponentially high combinations there, right? If you did like it's a combination calculator equation where it's like how many ways can you take 5 combinations of like 5,000 sims, right? So it's like an NCR equation where it's like an N and then a C, which is your combinations, and then the N is your total number of objects, and then R is like the sample that you want. So then what you would do is you do like 5,000 as your N, and then you do C, and then you do R, and then you say 5. So that would basically say like how many combinations of 5 can you get out of 5,000, and then that number is like exponentially high, right? So what I'm trying to say is like there are millions of combinations of all of these sims together for this slate simulation, which makes it incredibly low chance that you are going to dupe with another SaberSim member. So when I think about duplication, I don't think of it as like, hey, I'm using SaberSim, all these other people are using SaberSim, how can I get different? That's not exactly the case because of the way that we are randomly sampling all of our game sims and creating these slate simulations. I'm really looking at duplication on a contest level. I just care about duplication across a contest for the most part whenever I do care about it. So because we are randomly sampling the sims here, and we are not just optimizing based on projected score, it is very incredibly low chance for you to like dupe other SaberSim users in a large classic slate as we have for this example. But really good question to get us going. If I lost anybody there with like the NCR talk and the combination calculator, I apologize. Happy to retouch on anything if anybody has any additional questions. All right. Question in the YouTube chat from Mike. Seems like a lot of people are rolling in here. Welcome to the show, everybody. Happy Monday. This is our last question right here coming up from Mike. So if anybody has any additional questions, just let me know. All right. Mike said, profit plan on FanDuel, $100 budget. Diversifiers, how would you prioritize between wiffle ball, pinch hit, and beanball? Would you play all 3? Okay, so what we're talking about here is the DFS Profit Plan. It is our contest selection framework that we created based on a lot of back testing that we did. So if you're looking for like the Too Long Didn't Read video, it's right here on the YouTube channel. Start winning more with our DFS Profit Plan. If you go to the homepage, scroll down a little bit to this new here, start here first, you will see that 17-minute video that kind of wraps up a long behind the Sims series where we did a lot of contest simulations and determined what the best approach is for smoothing out your variance while allowing you to still continue to grow your bankroll while weathering the swings along the way. So that was this first behind the Sims series, 5 episodes. If you're looking for a deep dive, I would highly recommend checking that out. Was a very good series in my opinion. All right, going to get SaberSim pulled back up here and then talk about this a little bit. So you say $100 budget. I'm going to assume you're saying like $100 nightly allowance. Like you're not saying that the $100 is your bankroll, because if that were, then you would only have like $5 to play. So I'm going to assume that, we're talking about how to allocate $100 on a nightly basis on FanDuel. So I think that the 3 contests you listed, the 5 cent 150 max, I would play that. That's about $7.50. The pinch hit is a 25-cent 20 max. I would also play that. That gets us to about $12.50 here. And then the beanball is a 222, either a 20 max or a 25 max, depending on the day. Best my understanding, it looks like today it's a 25 max. So this contest is going to cost you about $55. So 55 plus 12, that puts us in like the $67, $68 range. I think it's fine to play all 3 of those contests. That what we suggest in our DFS profit plan is your 20 maxes and 150 maxes take up about 50 to 75% of your nightly allocation for your entry fees. So with the total there being just about $68, I think that's perfect. That falls right in the range that you're looking for. All of these contests are under $3, so the Sharks do not have access to these contests. I would then go and fill up some of the single entries. They have, a $1 single entry. They have a $1 3 max. I think they have a $2 single entry. They have those are all like the single entries that are under $3, but I think it's okay to play some of the other single entries. I think they have like a $5. They have a $10. I think that, you could mix in some of those. And then if you mix in that, that's about like 20 something dollars. And then you're right around where you want to be. If you want to mix in some low dollar satellites, their satellite contests tend to overlay pretty often, especially cross sport satellites. So I would look at, maybe some of the PGA satellites, maybe some of the NHL satellites, if like you're familiar with those sports, or if you're playing MLB, maybe they have some NBA playoff satellites, right? So take a peek at those satellites under $3 as well, and see if you could just kind of fill up that nightly allocation. I like the satellites under $3. One, the best players will not see them, and then 2, if the contest overlays, you might get a shot at a higher dollar contest at a decreased entry fee, right? So we all want to win the big prize. We all want to take some shots on some of these more flagship type contests. These satellites give you an opportunity to get into those contests at a reduced entry fee in a softer field in a contest that might overlay to begin with. So the bad thing about it is, like, if these contests are filling, you're playing these satellites, you have to pay the rake twice. You have to pay the rake for the satellite, and then you have to pay the rake for as part of your entry fee to the actual contest that you're going to be playing for prizes. So like that's one of the knocks on satellites. But if you could find satellites that are not filling consistently, you could miss the rake there, capture some overlay, and then just pay the rake with the tickets that you got at a discounted price, right? So some of my thoughts there. I think that, satellites can be a good way to fill up some of that allocation and get you close if you're kind of out of some of the best GPPs to play. It looks like Mike is here. So Mike, hope you are satisfied with that answer. If you have any follow-up on that, just let me know. Happy to talk about it further. But we are all caught up on questions in both the Discord and the YouTube chat. Let me see if there were any questions this weekend. Okay. So actually there was one question that came in via support. Glad I was able to catch this one. So this is our last question at the moment. If anybody has any questions, now is a great time to get them in. This question from support says, I'm struggling with choosing between making stands and distribution of lineups in NBA. For example, should I use both post build, min uniques, and geo-mean filter? Okay, good question here. So let's go over to NBA. We have a 2-game slate tonight. I think this is like perfect to talk about this. So first thing that I want to know is, what are the slider settings that we are recommending for this type of contest? So if I were to play a 20 max tonight, say like a bigger one, like 10 to 50K entrance, sliders are 0.9, right? So at 9 sim diversity, what we are doing is we are taking small buckets of sims to build your lineup. What this tells me is that we are not taking single slate optimals. So we are assuming that you probably do not need a 100% optimal lineup to win this contest, right? So what that tells me there is that I probably do not need to use a geomean filter here. I'm only using a geomean filter via aggregate rules or via post build filtering when sim diversity is at 10. And the reasoning for that is I'm specifically using a geometric mean filter to manage the number of duplicates that I am expecting to have across my lineup portfolio. By having sim diversity at 9 here, the builder is saying like, hey, we need to build for really high upside, but we probably don't need the top optimal lineup. And then even if you do get it, that lineup is probably not going to be duped or not heavily duped at all, right? So when I'm using a geomean filter, I'm trying to protect against a lineup that is highly duplicated, where the EV that I get from winning the contest with that lineup actually ends up being very low because so many people have that lineup, right? I think it's fairly comfortable to say that you could build with no geomean filter for tonight's slate and probably win a contest and that lineup not be duped more than like 2 or 3 times, maybe like 5 at most, in all your contests, right? And that's kind of what you're optimizing for anyways with geomean. Like you're not trying to find just uniques, you're trying to find lineups with high win upside that are lower duped, like in the 5 to 10 range. So geomean filter for me on tonight's 2-game NBA slate, probably not a factor here, but I think min uniques are still a factor for me here, right? So to just going with the example here, I'm going to build 500 lineups for this slate, and then I'm going to figure out, how different I can get on this 2-game slate, and I'll kind of show you guys my thought process for thinking through that. So I have these 20 lineups. I'm just going to say I'm playing a 20 max tonight. How do I want to do this, right? So I think min uniques are great. I think that you're going to be able to get to less min uniques on this 2-game slate. There's just less players in the player pool. You're going to be a little tighter here. So probably where I would start on a 2-game NBA slate is looking at some of the projections in the home screen, making sure that I'm okay with all of the players that are in my player pool. If I were playing tonight, I would probably be setting some type of min projection filter here, or even maybe like a minutes filter to be like, hey, I want to play guys that are going to be in the game, are going to be in the rotation. And so I might set this filter to cut off players who are like less than 10 minutes, but that's just kind of a side note. Let's say that I'm okay with all the players in my player pool at the moment. When I get to this post build, what I like to do is I like to scroll down to my last lineup in my set of 20, and then I like to start increasing this min uniques players and then see how far down in my pool I am going with my last lineup, right? So at min uniques of 3, what this is saying is that I have 8 players in this lineup. This is guaranteeing that 3 players are different in all 20 lineups that I am going to be playing than every other lineup. It's comparing it to all lineups within that set of 20. So min uniques of 3, I'm only at lineup 94 out of 563 here. I think that's great. I'm still in the top 20% on my pool here. I'm getting more and more diverse. The great thing about using the min uniques is that this allows the builder to kind of organically adjust your exposures here, right? So if I go back to 1, I'm going to see that I have Aaron Gordon at 90%, and then Al Horford and James Harden at 75%. And then with a bunch of extra players here, we're using 18 players total in our player pool here. When I go to 3, I add 1 player to this player pool. Aaron Gordon goes down 5%, but Horford dropped from 75 to 65. Harden dropped from 75 to 55. So by doing this, what you're telling the builder is you're making the builder kind of show you who the best plays are on a slate, in my opinion, because what it's going to do is like, okay, I can only have 5 players the same in every lineup. Who do I have to sacrifice to keep this, keep these main players, and then who is worth shifting around? So you kind of get this organic exposure adjustments rather than just doing it yourself, right? The builder is able to mix and match and kind of move guys down. So to me, what I got out of this adjustment is that James Harden, is a good play, but he might not be the best play because he moved down 20% with this min unique player. But Aaron Gordon only moved 5%, right? So Aaron Gordon really seems like a great play. And then the other thing is that DeAndre Ayton actually moved up in exposure here from where he was previously. So he's might be a play that might not have jumped out to us right away, kind of at like fourth best here. But with this min unique exposure increase, he actually went from 65 to 70, and nobody else moved up in exposure from that top 4 group there. So these are kind of the things that I am watching and looking for as I make these adjustments to kind of figure out who I think are the best plays here. But I do think that even on this 2-game slate, some diversity is important. I don't love having 1-for-1 swaps in lineups where an optimal is not needed. So I think that using at least 2 min uniques, more if you can get to more, is a fine strategy here. So once we get to like 4 min uniques here, we jump almost to lineup 400 here, using a lot of lineups in the 300 range. I would be much more comfortable staying at 3 here and staying in the top 20% of my lineup pool. Also depends, are you comfortable with the exposures that you're getting? Take a peek at your stack types. Are you okay having a 5 stack here? Are you okay with some of these, over 70% exposures that you're getting? And to me, I'm fine with all of these things. I might get rid of this 1 5 stack here and not play that one, and then just keep my stacks down. And then we get to line up 106, which is totally fine with me. But yeah, so that's kind of the way I'm thinking about diversification, whether or not I need to do anything for duplication. And I would be comfortable with these exposure settings going to this 2-game NBA slate. All right. Shane Atkinson said, per ownership in the contest, when is it best to consider fading the chalk? Is there a point where you think, okay, field has 60% exposure of this guy, fade? So good question here. I think it's different by sport, so I don't want to give like a blanket answer here. I think that way much less in NBA, like this NBA example that we are talking about here. I think that way much more in MLB. I'll say, this is like my opinion. If you ever see a hitter over like 50% owned, I love being under the field on that hitter. Hitters are just super variant. I've seen this a lot on OwnersBox specifically here. I've seen Mike Trout get to like 60% owned. We don't have ownership projections for OwnersBox, but just like when the Angels are a high team total and their ownership is pretty high on other sites like DraftKings, you could see some of these ownerships get like really out of hand on OwnersBox where players aren't playing particularly optimal. So just like an OwnersBox note for you guys, what I like to do when I'm playing over on OwnersBox is I will try and find a matching slate. So like we have this 6-game OwnersBox slate. I will go and look at DraftKings and Yahoo specifically because their formats are most similar to OwnersBox. So OwnersBox has 1 pitcher spot, but then it has a superflex spot. You should basically always be playing a pitcher in the superflex spot just because pitchers grade out so much better on a variance level and a projection level. So like when you build lineups with SaberSim, you'll basically always get 2 pitchers, 1 in the pitcher spot, 1 in the superflex spot. So that roster construction lends itself really closely to Yahoo and DraftKings, where you have 2 pitchers naturally here. You have 2 pitcher spots. So I think that if you could find a slate that has the same number of games on DraftKings or Yahoo, you can kind of trust some of the ownership that you see here. I think that you could trust like the pitcher ownership. And I think that I wouldn't trust individual batter ownership, but I think that you could look at teams and get a rough estimation of stack ownership and be like fairly comfortable with having a general sense of ownership going into a slate. So like what I like to do is I'll come over to DraftKings. I'll look at the ownership of like the top players in the lineup, usually like the top 5 or 6, because I think that a lot of people do not like playing these 7, 8, 9 hitters. So I think batters 1 through 6 kind of estimate stack ownership a little bit better here. And then I'll just look at like the top projected teams. So usually teams like over implied run total of 5 here. So I'm going to start with San Diego. I'm comfortable saying that San Diego is going to be stacked somewhere in like the 10 to 15% ish range here, just kind of eyeballing it, kind of taking an estimate and just making some mental notes to help me make decisions about where my exposures lie. Am I over or under the field in my, estimation here? But getting back to the question, I think that, if you see individual batters really, really high owned. Batters are just super variant. Let's look at Whit Merrifield, for example, here. His highest outcome, 23% of the time, he gets 0 fantasy points. This will be displayed better in this adjusted ownership column. So what we do at SaberSim is we have projected ownership in your contest, and then we have this adjusted ownership column, which is new here. What this is doing is that it is basically looking at the player's range of outcomes and determining how high variance this player is. And if we determine that this player is very high variance, what we will do is we will use this altered ownership projection here, where we are basically inflating the ownership projection to make this player look higher owned, because we are negatively weighting ownership in the post build process. And I'll just display this for you guys here. So when you run your lineups, right? We used to have an ownership fade slider. We don't anymore. We only account for ownership in the lineup grading process as part of SaberScore now, to get rid of some double counting features that we previously had. We think it's a lot better this way. Our back testing has shown that it's a lot better this way. So ownership not taken into account as a slider anymore, but it is a big part of this SaberScore metric. And then also with SaberScore, you can now see the actual formula and the variables being weighed here and what the factors are. So you can see here that we are negatively weighting adjusted ownership here. What that is basically saying is like, hey, we understand that Whit Merrifield, grades out really well on a point per dollar basis. His fantasy points per dollar might be really high here, but this player is still, has a wide range of outcomes. And by inflating his ownership here, this is going to stop the builder from just jamming him into all the lineups. And this will basically say, hey, this guy's ownership is really high. Let's be careful with how many lineups we put him in. And that is our way of telling the builder, hey, this player is really high variance. Let's not just jam him in like he is just a smash play to reach this projection, because there are all these instances where he does not. So be really careful with this player. So that's what we're doing with adjusted ownership. I think that, this column and this variable weighting in SaberScore does a really good job of, managing the amount of exposure you get to some of these guys. And I'm pretty interested in where we fall with him. So we have him about 10% of lineups, right? So we're saying, hey, he's a fine play. Let's have a little bit of him, but let's not have too much of him, right? And I think that's exactly what we want to see, especially without any other adjustments in the post build. I just ran this, and this is what we're kind of getting right out of the gate here. So I'm really happy with this, but I don't feel the same way about other positions. I think that batters in baseball are a different breed, kind of, probably closest to like hockey players. I think that you can make probably the exact opposite assumption, I think, for like a lot of pitchers here, because their range of outcomes is a lot more normally distributed. Looks nothing like what we saw for the Whit Merrifield range of outcomes here. This is a nice, bell-shaped curve for Blake Snell, where Merrifield was like this big with this, very right skewed data set here. So all these players are different, really hard to make like a blanket rule. But I think that looking at different types of players categorically here can give you a little bit of insight as to which players are probably going to reach a projection when they're higher owned versus players that might be higher variance when they're higher owned. And I think you could also look at adjusted ownership comparatively here and draw some of the same conclusions. All right. Ryan Nelson said, I have now had like 6 or 8 top 10s on Yahoo for MLB, but they have all finished like 5th or 6th place. Yeah, this is like really hard. And DFS is so variant kind of for this reason, right? If you listen to Lulz is a DFS podcast with Brian Hooper and Peter Overzet. They talk about this from time to time here. It's like once you get in the so to get in the top, 10 places of a contest, right? You're already in the top 1%, the top 0.1%, depending on the contest, the top 0.01%. It gets really random as to whether or not you can go, whether you get, sixth, or whether you get, second, or whether you get first, right? So just the fact that you're consistently in the top 10, I think that's great. Variance probably just isn't falling your way. I would continue to stick with your process. It sounds like, if you can consistently show up in the top 10, I think you're doing something right. And just let the variance eventually fall your way there. I've had like kind of similar kind of feelings or results over on OwnersBox. I play like the OwnersBox flagship almost every day, and I come in the top 10 a lot, but I've only had one takedown to this point in the season, about a month, but just consistently, kind of flirting with it, kind of around there. So those will fall your way eventually. Just hang in there, keep up the strong process. Shane said, makes perfect sense. Thanks. Yeah, man. Happy to shed some light on that and give you some useful insight there. But all right, everybody, we are all caught up on questions. I think we're all set now to get out of here. I'm going to talk a little bit more about OwnersBox really quickly in case any last questions come in. But if you guys are not playing over on OwnersBox, I would highly recommend it. The contests continue to overlay. The contests are generally softer over there. And then also, if you use promo code SABER or SaberSim, you can earn free SaberSim credit by playing over there. If you sign up with SaberSim, you can also get a $500 deposit bonus. But basically, we track your entry fees, and then we will reach out to you when you reach different thresholds here. So if you get up to $3,500 in entry fees, we'll reach out to you, say, hey, you qualify for 1 free month of standard. Do you want to add that to your account, or do you want to wait until you reach one of these pro or prop plan levels? Once you cash in on that prize, we will reset your entry fee tracking and then reach out to you again when you achieve that goal once again here. So I know users are already cashing in on this and earning free SaberSim credit. Do it yourself. Take advantage of it, of these contests early in the MLB season here. All right. One more question for Frank. Going to get SaberSim pulled back up. Frank said, when you up the projections for a few players on one team, do the Sims automatically bump up their stack percentage? So good question here. So the answer is, well, let me say this. Adjusting a team total is much different from adjusting an individual batter projection here. So what I would say is that the best way to understand this is like, let's say that I come to the Yankees here and I adjust the projections for Anthony Volpe. I'm going to go with Volpe. From 7.9 to 8.5. Let's say I increase Anthony Rizzo from 9.19 to 10. And we'll just use these two guys, for example. This individual projection adjustment is only going to affect this player. And what we are going to do is for Anthony Rizzo, we went from 9.2 to 10 here. So a 0.8 projection adjustment. We are going to take his entire distribution and shift it 0.8 points. So every time that he got 0 points, he's now going to get 0.8. Every time he got 10 points, now he's going to get 10.8, et cetera here, right? This is going to have no effect on the other players in the lineup. We can see that he is correlated to Anthony Volpe and Isaiah Kiner-Falefa and Gleyber Torres. This is going to have no effect on these other players. It is only going to affect his individual projection and his individual range of outcomes. If we want to have an effect on the team as a whole, it is better to adjust the team total here. So if we want to say we want to get to more Yankees, we think Yankees are going to do a little better than their implied run total here. So we're going to increase them a half run here as an example. I'm going to hit this apply changes to game button. And then now when I go to the Yankees here, their entire team's projections are going to be adjusted here. So what is happening in this example is that we are going to start filtering out game sims where the Yankees score minimal runs here. So probably games where they score no runs, they get shut out. And then we're going to continue to discount those sims until the new Yankees team total matches what we put in the team total field. So we will discount sims until we can get the Yankees team total on average, average run total of 4.8. So maybe we had 5,000 sims. Now we have, 4,500 effective sims that we can pull from when we go to build your lineups. And then those 500 sims that we are now discounting are probably all sims where the Yankees did bad. So it's much more likely the Yankees to get put into your lineup with discounting those sims and then just filtering the available sims for the builder to use when we build your lineups. And then just on another side note, that by discounting game sims here, this will also have an effect on Cleveland as well here. So if you pull up Cleveland, you might see some updated projections for them as well. That's because they are part of those games that we are discounting. So it's a little more random, but you might see guys, move up or down depending on, what ultimately happened in those sims that we got rid of to move the Yankees team total here. So a little bit more random, but you could see the effect on the game level by also looking at the opponent in this example. Frank said, thanks. Yep, man. Happy to help out. One question here from Chuck DePure. Chuck said, is it a good idea to, I think this is a good question. Is it a good idea to copy the adjusted ownership values from DK into OwnersBox? So I will tell you guys what I do here. I copy it for pitchers only. I think that from some of the spot checking that I've done, the pitcher ownership projections on DraftKings compared to OwnersBox when the same games are on the slate. So we have a 6-game slate on DraftKings. We have a 6-game slate on OwnersBox. All the same games. I think it's okay to copy ownership for pitchers. I do not like copying ownership for batters. Batter ownership can just get like really, really weird on OwnersBox from what I've seen. You might have like on average like 5% ownership for the Braves, and then you'll see Matt Olson at like 40% owned, like way off base for the entire team. So I think batter projections are like really, really strange on OwnersBox, but I think pitchers kind of fall in line here. So that's something I've been doing. So I'll show you guys what I do here. I'm going to pull up my screen. So what I do is I'll come on DraftKings. I'll download this table. And then this is the CSV that we get from the table. I'll just filter for pitchers only here. And then now I have my pitchers here. So then what I'll do is I'll just take all the starters basically. And then I like to upload the adjusted ownership values here because this is basically what we're using for SaberScore generally here. So I'd rather have the adjusted ownership than the my ownership because this is taking into account the player's variance here. So then I'll just copy and paste these fields since I have them right here. And then I'll go to OwnersBox. Just waiting for it to load. And then I'll go to upload, paste this in. You just need names and ownership here. And then now I have pitcher ownership here. Haven't really run this by anyone on the team, but my thinking here is that, some ownership projections are better than none, right? I feel like ownership is this puzzle, and what we are doing is we are putting, some of the puzzle pieces together. So I like to imagine, putting the outside pieces of the puzzle together, and then eventually, when we start to do ownership for OwnersBox, that will just put the entire puzzle together. But I think it's better to have some puzzle pieces together rather than none here. So this gives the builder some idea of some of these ownerships, and it can figure out, what it wants to do from there. But if anybody on the SaberSim team is listening to this and has a different opinion, happy to revise my answer with a little discussion there. So this is something I do, something I've been doing. I think it's good. I think that it helps ultimately here. Also gives me like a visual for building my lineups, get into the post build, get some idea of what some of these players are. I will say that I've seen this across all sites actually, is that the consensus best pitching play of the day is usually much higher owned on OwnersBox, on DraftKings, on FanDuel, on all sites. So it looks like Blake Snell is like far and away the best pitcher today. Salary's low, projection is high, and ownership is high. We haven't projected like 53%. I would say you're probably going to see like 65 to 70% ownership for Blake Snell. This is like a trend I've seen all baseball season. So, check it out tonight. Look at it yourselves. But I would probably just come in here and boost him a little bit, right? Might not be perfect, but I'm just looking for like a directionally accurate adjustment here to get him closer to what I think he's actually going to come in at, which I think he probably comes in closer to 65 than 53, but TBD there. All right. Last question from Danny. Danny said, does SaberSim have the capability to learn how other DFS players play to make unique lineups? So I think that, we do contest sims internally here to help us figure out what the best actual scores are, to adjust slider settings, to adjust Saber scores. But we are not using actual lineups that other players are playing to figure out how can I say this? We are not tracking individual users and using their data individually to build your lineups. We are looking at, contests and running contest sims where we're analyzing all users and all lineups, mostly lineups. Like we don't really care who exactly, OCDO, BV, and Shady Advice, what their individual exposures are per se here. But we're looking at all of the lineups across the contest and then using that data to help make our assumptions about a contest type or a slate size better. But we're not tracking individual players in the way that you're exactly describing here, if my understanding is correct. All right, everybody. Great show today. Always love Monday shows. Seems like we get a lot of engagement. We got a lot of questions from over the weekend. We'll be right back here tomorrow for our Tuesday show. If anybody has any questions building lineups throughout the day, drop them in the office hours channel in the Discord. Let them sit there, and then that gives us a steady queue of questions to get started with when we get back here tomorrow, 2 p.m. Eastern. So until then, take care. Good luck in your contests. I will see you. Bye.